It sounds like you're saying promiscuity and having a lot of sex with a lot of women is actually not helpful towards men's power. But we live in a world where this sense of power is established and maybe even bestowed upon a man for his quote unquote sexual prowess. How do you reconcile the two? Are you more of a man because you're attracting and having sex with lots of women because that's our biological prerogative? Or is it chastity and maybe a different kind of virtue?
Well, to people who think that having sex with as many women as possible and not even being married to them is somehow masculine, you need to face the fact that at no stage in human history has promiscuity meant masculinity. Now, I know that many cultures have had men with multiple wives, but that's different. They are married, and that's a lot of responsibility if you're one man trying to provide for 5 women and their children. And even then, under polygamy, one man, lots of wives, there are no large, stable, successful societies that have operated like that. And the earliest humans lived in monogamous hunter-gatherer societies. So we start with monogamy, and then human beings being what they are, fallen creatures, lusting after power and tending towards disorder. Of course, we're going to get some men, the most powerful ones, wanting to take all the hottest women for themselves. But the problem is that is bad for society at large. It destabilizes things. And here is where the incel guys have a point, because with the breakdown of monogamy, we have got all kinds of problems nowadays. You've got some of the top guys, whether it's just through looks, genetics, whether it's through their earnings, their social status, they can go on Tinder, whatever dating app they want, and basically just swipe through all the girls and take as many as they want. And those women, because they're not committing either to marriage, where are the other guys, the ones who would normally be paired off under monogamy and be able to get settled into families? Well, they feel they got nowhere to go. And those women who get used and then moved on from by these guys who essentially are creating kind of harems for themselves, they end up bitter as well. And then we've got male behavior making women bitter about men, and that is fueling the whole feminist narrative. So historically, what the top men have actually realized is that no, we need to, for the sake of the whole community, for the sake of the wider society, we need to sacrifice the possibility of all the women we could get for the good of the whole community. We will just pair off with one woman, and then we'll bring the rest of the men into the community. So that's how monogamy works, integrating men into families and therefore into society overall. And what we're attempting now to go without monogamy and have young guys just sleeping around, that has been disastrous in the past. So when the Roman Empire fell, the Emperor Augustus at one point was desperate to try to encourage men to get married. Marriage was seen as a burden. Men were running away from it. And he thought, unless we can fix this, then we are in for decline and we can't reproduce. We haven't got enough people to farm the land. He knew what was coming, and it did. Rome did fall, partly because of infertility problems. The replacement fertility rate wasn't being met. So you've got, because of the breakdown of monogamy in Rome, you've got homosexuality on the increase. You've got women no longer wanting to have children because the men aren't providing for them. So all kinds of problems then historically that we have now as well. So I think whenever a society is devaluing motherhood and devaluing the provider role for men in families, then there's plenty of evidence from the past to show that bad things are coming. And I think a lot of young men actually are realizing there's a kind of hollowness to the lifestyle that's being promoted to them as so glorious and so fulfilling. In their hearts, they know it's not. And people are craving that traditional family setup, but afraid of it because there are real risks to it. The way that the courts, for example, tend to treat men when divorce comes up, the fact you can get no fault divorce. Some guys are rightly wary of this and they're worried of losing everything. My response to that would be that marriage and family are now the battlefield that men have to fight on for the future. And like any battlefield, it can be a bit frightening, and you need courage and you need to have your eyes open when you're walking onto it, and you need to do everything you can to take the precautions. And I'm not going to say that that means that everyone's going to be safe. I think there will be some people still, even though they try their hardest to do everything right, just like in a war, there will be some casualties, but it's a man's duty to sacrifice himself for the sake of what is right. So the choice is either now, I think, marriage, family, or you've got chastity, or you've got degeneracy. You can go down that route of promiscuity and see where that leads you. But coming back to that point about the ghetto, we know what the results of that are. Look at what happens with people having kids outside marriage. Look at what happens when men aren't part of families. Look at the social breakdown.